Clara Whitmore dropped to her knees beside the sleeping rancher's bed. Her hands trembled as she whispered a prayer she never meant for anyone to hear. She prayed for his safety. She prayed for his lonely heart. She prayed that God would send him someone to love. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she begged heaven to bless the man who had saved her and her son from the streets. She didn't know his eyes were open in the darkness. She didn't know he heard every word. And she didn't know that prayer would change both their lives forever. If you want to know what happens next, subscribe to my channel and follow Clara's story to the very end. Comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. Clara Whitmore clutched her son's hand so tight the boy whimpered. "Mama, you're hurting me." "Hush, Tommy." She pulled him closer against her skirt. "Don't say a word." Judge Cornelius Wade leaned back in his leather chair, his fat fingers drumming on the mahogany desk. The gold watch chain across his belly caught the afternoon light streaming through his office window. "Mrs. Whitmore." He smiled, but his eyes stayed cold. "Your husband owed me $300 when he died. Did you think death would erase that debt?" Clara's throat tightened. "I didn't know about any debt, Your Honor. Daniel never told me." "Ignorance ain't a defense in my court." Wade pulled a document from his drawer and slid it across the desk. "This here's a legal claim against your husband's estate, which means everything he owned belongs to me now, including whatever you got left." "I got nothing left." Clara's voice cracked. "They already took the house, the furniture. I sold my wedding ring last month just to feed my boy." "That ain't my concern." Tommy pressed his face into his mother's hip. At 5 years old, he'd already learned to make himself small when adults raised their voices. Wade stood up slowly, his chair groaning under his weight. He walked around the desk until he stood close enough that Clara could smell the whiskey on his breath. "There is one way to settle this debt, Mrs. Whitmore." Clara took a step back. "What way?" "Elijah McAllister." Wade spoke the name like it tasted bitter. "You know who he is. The rancher. Everyone knows the McAllister name. His daddy and me had disagreements. Old Angus McAllister made my life difficult for years before he died." Wade's jaw tightened. "The son is just as stubborn, sitting on the biggest ranch in Wheeler County thinking he's better than the law." Clara didn't understand. "What's that got to do with me?" "McAllister needs a housekeeper. His last one left a month ago. I can get you that job." "Why would you help me?" Wade laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Because you're gonna help me back. McAllister's got land I want. Legal papers, business dealings, anything you can find that might give me leverage against him." He reached out and lifted her chin with one thick finger. "You bring me information, and your debt gets smaller. Simple as that." Clara jerked away from his touch. "You want me to spy for you?" "I want you to survive." Wade's smile disappeared. "Because if you don't take this deal, I'll have the sheriff collect your boy tomorrow morning. The orphanage in Austin is always looking for healthy children." "No." Clara pulled Tommy behind her. "You can't do that. He's my son." "A mother who can't provide for her child ain't fit to keep him. That's the law, Mrs. Whitmore. My law." Wade returned to his chair and sat down heavily. "You got until sundown to decide. The McAllister Ranch is 3 miles east of town. I suggest you start walking." Clara walked those 3 miles with Tommy on her hip, for the last half his small legs too tired to carry him further. The carpet bag containing everything they owned grew heavier with each step. "Mama, I'm thirsty." "I know, baby. We're almost there." "Where are we going?" Clara didn't answer. How could she explain that they were walking toward a stranger's house because a corrupt judge had given her no choice? How could she tell her son that she'd agreed to become a spy just to keep him out of an orphanage? She couldn't. So she kept walking. The McAllister Ranch appeared through the dust and heat. Clara stopped at the gate, staring at the big white house that rose up from the brown Texas land like something from a dream. "That's a big house, Mama." "Yes, it is." A cowboy on horseback rode up to the gate. He was young, maybe 20, with a friendly face, burned red by the sun. "Help you, ma'am." "I'm looking for Mr. McAllister. I heard he needs a housekeeper." The cowboy looked at her torn dress, at the exhausted child in her arms, at the single carpetbag that held her entire life. "You walked here from town?" "Yes, sir." He swung down from his horse. "Name's Pete Dawson. I work the cattle here." He pushed open the gate. "Come on, I'll take you to the house. But I gotta warn you, ma'am. Mr. McAllister ain't the friendliest man you'll ever meet." Clara shifted Tommy to her other hip. "I ain't looking for friendly. I'm looking for work." Dud. Hattie Mae Johnson was rolling out biscuit dough when she heard the knock. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked to the kitchen door. The woman standing there looked like she'd been through a war. Dust covered her from head to toe. A little boy clung to her neck, his eyes wide with exhaustion. "Lord have mercy." Hattie opened the door wider. "Get in here, child, both of you." "Ma'am, I'm sorry to trouble you. Pete, Mr. Dawson, he said Mr. McAllister might need a housekeeper." "What Mr. McAllister needs is a whole lot of things." Hattie took the carpetbag from Clara's hand and set it on the floor. "Sit down before you fall down. When's the last time you ate?" Clara lowered herself into a wooden chair. Tommy slid from her lap and stood pressed against her side. "Yesterday morning, ma'am. We shared some bread." Hattie's eyes went soft with something Clara hadn't seen in a long time. Compassion. "Yesterday morning." She shook her head. "And you walked 3 miles in this heat." She moved to the stove and ladled stew into 2 bowls. "Eat first, talk later." Tommy looked up at his mother. "Can I, Mama?" "Go ahead, baby." The boy attacked the stew like he'd never seen food before. Clara ate more slowly, though her stomach was screaming. She'd learned a long time ago that desperation made people weak, and she couldn't afford to look weak. Not here. Not now. "What's your name, child?" Hattie sat down across from her. "Clara Whitmore, ma'am. This is my son, Thomas. Tommy." "And where's Mr. Whitmore?" Clara's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "Dead. 6 months now. I'm sorry for your loss." "Don't be." The words came out harder than Clara intended. "He wasn't worth grieving." Hattie raised an eyebrow, but didn't push. "You got experience keeping house?" "I've been cleaning and cooking since I was 12 years old, ma'am. I can mend clothes, tend a garden, care for livestock. I ain't afraid of hard work." Clara set down her spoon. "I know I don't look like much right now, but I'll work harder than anyone you've ever seen. I just need a chance." "Mama makes the best biscuits." Tommy offered his mouth full of stew. "Even better than bread." Hattie smiled. It transformed her whole face. "Is that so?" "Tommy, don't talk with your mouth full." Before Hattie could respond, boots sounded on the wooden floor behind them, heavy boots walking with purpose. "Hattie, who are these people?" Clara turned in her chair. The man standing in the doorway was taller than Daniel had been taller than any man she'd met. Dark hair fell past his collar. A scar cut through his left eyebrow. His eyes were gray like storm clouds and just as cold. She stood up quickly, nearly knocking over her chair. "Mr. McAllister, I'm Clara Whitmore. I came about the housekeeper position." Elijah McAllister looked at her. Just looked. His gaze moved from her dusty hair to her threadbare dress to the worn-out boots barely holding together on her feet. "Where'd you come from?" "Town, sir." "You walked from town?" "Yes, sir." "With a child?" Clara lifted her chin. "My son ain't a burden. He'll stay quiet, stay out of your way. You won't even know he's here." Tommy had stopped eating. He stared at the big man with the same wariness Clara felt in her own chest. Elijah's jaw tightened. "I didn't say he was a burden. I asked how you got here. And I told you, we walked. In this heat, 3 miles. No water, no horse, no wagon." His voice hardened. "You got a death wish, Mrs. Whitmore? Or are you just stupid?" The word hit her like a slap. Clara felt the familiar shame rising in her throat, the old instinct to look down. apologize, make herself smaller. But she was so tired, tired of being afraid, tired of men who thought cruelty was strength. "I ain't stupid, Mr. McAllister." She met his eyes directly for the first time. "I'm desperate. There's a difference." Something flickered in those gray eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or something else she couldn't name. "Eli." Hattie's voice carried a warning. "This woman needs help. Every woman who shows up at my door needs help." Elijah turned away. "Last 3 wanted money. The one before that wanted a husband. I ain't running a charity, and I ain't looking for a wife. I don't want your money, and I sure as hell don't want to marry you." Clara's voice shook, but she kept going. "I want to work. That's all. A place to sleep, food for my son, and honest wages. If you ain't willing to give me that, then say so, and we'll leave." She reached for Tommy's hand. "Come on, baby, we're going." "Where?" Elijah turned back. "Back to town. 3 more miles in the dark with a child who can barely stand." "That ain't your concern." "No, it ain't." He rubbed a hand over his face. "But Hattie'll never forgive me if I let you leave." "Don't do me any favors, Mr. McAllister. I don't need your pity." "Good, because I ain't got any to give." He stared at her for a long moment. 1-month trial. "You keep the house clean, cook decent meals, and stay out of my way. You cause trouble, you're gone. Understood?" Clara's heart pounded. "Understood." "There's a room above the kitchen. Small, but it's clean. Hattie'll show you." He turned to leave, then stopped. "What's the boy's name?" "Tommy, sir." Elijah looked at the child. Tommy stared back with those big brown eyes that had seen too much for 5 years old. "You like horses, Tommy?" The boy nodded slowly. "Got a mare in the stable who just had a foal 3 weeks ago. If your mama says it's all right, you can see him tomorrow." Tommy's face lit up. "Really, Mama? Can I?" Clara's throat tightened. "We'll see." Elijah walked out without another word. That night, Clara lay on the narrow bed in the room above the kitchen. Tommy slept curled against her side, his breathing slow and peaceful for the first time in weeks. She stared at the ceiling and thought about Judge Wade. Bring me information. Legal papers. Business dealings. The room she'd been given was small but clean. The bed was soft. Tommy had eaten 2 bowls of stew and 3 biscuits before falling asleep with a full belly. And all she had to do was betray the man who'd given them shelter. Clara squeezed her eyes shut. She remembered Elijah McAllister's cold gray eyes, his harsh words, the way he'd looked at her like she was a problem to be solved rather than a person to be seen. He's not a good man, she told herself. Just another rich rancher who thinks he owns the world. But then she remembered how his voice had softened when he talked to Tommy about the foal. How he'd made sure they had food and shelter, even while insulting her. "Stay out of my way," he'd said, as if keeping distance was the only way he knew to protect himself. Clara knew something about walls. She'd built plenty of her own. Tomorrow she would start her new job. Tomorrow she would figure out how to give Judge Wade enough information to keep him satisfied without truly hurting Elijah McAllister. Tomorrow she would learn how to survive in this house full of secrets. But tonight she held her sleeping son and whispered a prayer into the darkness. "Lord, I don't know if you're listening anymore. I've done things I ain't proud of. I'm about to do more. But please, please keep Tommy safe. He's all I got. He's the only pure thing left in my life." She paused, her voice catching. "And that man McAllister, I don't know what kind of person he is. But something in his eyes, it looked like loneliness. Like the same loneliness I carry. So if it ain't too much trouble, Lord, maybe look after him too." She didn't know why she said it. She didn't know why she cared. But as sleep finally pulled her under, Clara Whitmore had the strangest feeling that her life had just changed forever. And she had no idea how much. 3 miles away, Judge Cornelius Wade poured himself another whiskey and smiled. The widow was in place. The trap was set. Elijah McAllister had no idea what was coming. The first week passed in a blur of work and watchfulness. Clara scrubbed floors until her knees ached. She beat rugs until her arms burned. She cooked breakfast before dawn and cleaned dishes long after dark. And every night, she fell into her narrow bed, too exhausted to think about Judge Wade or the information she was supposed to gather. Tommy followed Hattie around the kitchen like a shadow helping stir pots and count eggs. The old woman had taken to the boy, immediately sneaking him extra biscuits when Clara wasn't looking. "Your mama works too hard," Hattie told Tommy one morning. "She's trying to prove something." "Prove what?" "That she belongs here." Hattie handed him a warm biscuit. "That she's worth keeping." Clara overheard from the doorway. She pretended she hadn't. Elijah McAllister kept his distance, just as he'd demanded she keep hers. He left before sunrise and returned after dark, eating his meals alone in the study rather than at the dining table. When they crossed paths in the hallway, he nodded once and kept walking. Clara told herself she preferred it that way. But she noticed things. She noticed how he stopped to check on the new foal every morning, his rough hands gentle on the young horse's neck. She noticed how he paid his cowboys fairly and never raised his voice in anger even when things went wrong. She noticed the stack of letters on his desk, all unopened, all addressed in the same feminine handwriting. On the seventh night, Clara made a decision. She waited until the house was quiet, until Tommy's breathing had slowed into sleep. Then she slipped out of bed and crept downstairs to Elijah's study. The door was unlocked. She pushed it open and stepped inside. Her heart pounded so loud she was sure someone would hear. Judge Wade's words echoed in her mind. "Legal papers, business dealings, anything that gives me leverage." Clara moved to the desk. Her hands shook as she reached for the first drawer. Looking for something. She spun around. Elijah stood in the doorway, a glass of whiskey in his hand. His shirt was untucked, his hair disheveled. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. "Mr. McAllister." Clara's voice came out too high. "I was just snooping through my papers at midnight." He stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. "That's what you were just doing." "No, I—" She backed against the desk. "I thought I heard a noise. I came to check." "A noise?" He took another step closer. "In my locked study, in the middle of the night. The door wasn't locked, because I was coming back." He set the whiskey glass down on a side table. "Try again, Mrs. Whitmore, and this time try the truth." Clara's mind raced. She could confess everything, Judge Wade, the blackmail, the threat against Tommy. But what would Elijah do? Throw her out, turn her over to the sheriff, the same sheriff who worked for Wade. "I can't," she whispered. "You can't tell me the truth." "I can't tell you anything." Tears burned her eyes. "Please, just let me go back to my room. I'll pack our things in the morning. We'll be gone before breakfast." Elijah stared at her for a long moment. Then he did something she didn't expect. He laughed. It wasn't a warm laugh. It was bitter hollow, the sound of a man who'd been disappointed too many times to feel surprised anymore. "I knew it." He shook his head. "I knew you were too good to be true. Pretty widow shows up out of nowhere with a sad story and a sweet kid. Exactly what a lonely fool like me would fall for." "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" He grabbed her arm, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to hold her in place. "Who sent you Charlotte Marcus?" "Some banker looking to buy my land cheap." "I don't know any Charlotte or Marcus." "Then who?" Clara yanked her arm free. "Let go of me." "Not until you tell me why you're really here." She should have lied. She should have made up some story he'd believe. But she was so tired of lying. Tired of being afraid. Tired of being trapped between impossible choices. Judge Wade. The name came out like poison. "He sent me." Elijah went still. "Wade. My husband owed him money, $300. Clara's voice broke. When Daniel died, Wade said the debt passed to me. He said if I didn't pay, he'd take Tommy, put him in an orphanage. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. He told me to come here, to find information about you. Papers, documents, anything he could use. Use for what? I don't know. He said your daddy made his life difficult. He wants revenge, I think. Or your land. Or both. Clara looked up at him. I'm sorry. I didn't want to do this, but Tommy is all I have. He's the only reason I'm still alive. Elijah released her and stepped back. His face had gone hard, but not with anger, with something colder, something that looked like old pain. Did you find anything? What? In my desk. Did you find anything you could use? Clara shook her head. I hadn't started looking yet. You caught me before I could. So you got nothing to bring back to Wade? No. Elijah walked to the window and stood with his back to her. For a long moment he said nothing. Clara waited, her heart hammering, certain he was about to call for his men to throw her off the property. That orphanage in Austin, he said finally. I know it. My father donated money there for years. Good people run it now, but 10 years ago... He trailed off. A boy I knew grew up there. He told me stories that would keep you awake at night. Clara's blood went cold. Please, I'll do anything. Just don't let him take my son. I'm not going to let Wade take anyone. Elijah turned around. His eyes had changed. The coldness was still there, but underneath it, something else burned. That man has been a cancer on this county for 20 years. My father tried to stop him and failed. The town council tried and failed. Wade owns the sheriff, half the judges in the territory, and enough politicians to make himself untouchable. Then there's no hope. There's always hope, Mrs. Whitmore. Elijah walked past her to the desk and opened the drawer she'd been about to search. He pulled out a stack of papers and set them in front of her. These are land deeds, property records, financial documents. Everything Wade would need to make a move against this ranch. Clara stared at them. Why are you showing me this? Because you're going to give them to Wade. What? Elijah smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes. Copies, forgeries, documents that look real enough to convince him but won't hold up in any honest court. He leaned against the desk. Wade thinks he's using you to destroy me, but we're going to use you to destroy him. Clara's head spun. I don't understand. You go back to Wade. You tell him you found these papers. You string him along week after week, feeding him just enough information to keep him satisfied. Elijah's voice hardened. And while he's focused on these fake documents, I'll be gathering evidence of every crooked deal he's ever made, every bribe, every threat, every family he's destroyed. And when you have enough evidence, then I bring it to the federal court in Austin. Wade owns the local law, but he doesn't own the feds. Not yet. Elijah studied her face. The question is, are you brave enough to help me? Clara thought about Tommy sleeping peacefully upstairs. She thought about Judge Wade's fat fingers on her chin. She thought about all the years she'd spent being used by men who saw her as nothing more than a tool. What if it doesn't work? She asked. What if Wade finds out I'm playing him? Then we're both dead. Elijah said it matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. But I'd rather die fighting than live as his puppet. Wouldn't you? Clara met his eyes, gray like storm clouds, gray like the barrel of a gun. Yes, she said, I would. The next morning, Clara went to town to deliver her first report to Judge Wade. She rode in the wagon with Pete Dawson, who was picking up supplies. Tommy stayed behind with Hattie, playing with wooden horses the old woman had found in the attic. Wade received her in his office with a smile that made her skin crawl. Well, well, my little sparrow returns. He gestured to a chair. Sit. Tell me what you've learned. Clara sat on the edge of the seat, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. She recited the script Elijah had given her. Mr. McAllister keeps his important papers in a locked study. I haven't been able to get inside yet, but I've seen him carrying documents late at night. Legal documents, I think. He locks them in his desk. Wade leaned forward. What kind of legal documents? I couldn't see clearly, but one of them had a red seal on it. Official looking. A red seal. Wade's eyes gleamed. That could be a land deed, or a banknote. He drummed his fingers on the desk. Good. Keep watching. When you get access to that study, I want to know everything that's in it. Yes, Your Honor. And Clara. He waited until she met his eyes. Don't get any ideas about running. I have men watching the ranch. If you try to leave Wheeler County with that boy, I'll know within the hour. Clara's stomach turned. I understand. Good girl. Wade waved his hand toward the door. Now get back to work, and next time bring me something I can use. She walked out of his office on shaking legs. Pete was waiting by the wagon loading bags of flour and sugar. You all right, ma'am? You look pale. I'm fine. Clara climbed into the wagon seat. Let's go home. The word slipped out before she could stop it. Home. The McAllister Ranch wasn't her home. It was a battleground, a place where she was fighting a war she hadn't chosen. But as the wagon rolled past the town limits and the big white house appeared in the distance, Clara realized something. For the first time in years, she felt like she was fighting on the right side. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Clara fell into a rhythm. She cleaned and cooked during the day. At night, she met with Elijah in his study, going over the fake documents she would feed to Wade. They spoke in whispers, their heads bent close together over the desk. This one, Elijah said, pointing to a forged bank statement. Give him this next. It shows a loan I supposedly took out against the North Pasture. Wade's been wanting that land for years. He'll think I'm vulnerable. And when he moves on it, he'll find out the loan doesn't exist. The bank will deny any knowledge of it. Wade will look like a fool, or worse, a man who tried to steal land based on forged documents. Clara studied the paper. This is dangerous. If he realizes I'm the one feeding him lies, he won't. Elijah's hand brushed hers as he reached for another document. Wade sees what he wants to see. A desperate widow, a foolish woman. He'll never imagine you're smart enough to outsmart him. Is that supposed to be a compliment? A ghost of a smile crossed Elijah's face. It's the truth. They were quiet for a moment. Clara became aware of how close they were standing. Close enough to see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. Close enough to smell soap and leather and something distinctly him. She stepped back. I should check on Tommy. Clara. He said her name softly, and she stopped. It was the first time he'd used her first name. Yes. Elijah seemed to struggle with something. His jaw tightened. His hand flexed at his side. Be careful, he finally said. Wade is more dangerous than you know. I know exactly how dangerous he is. Clara walked to the door. That's why I'm not going to let him win. She climbed the stairs to her room. Tommy was already asleep, his small body curled around a wooden horse that Pete had carved for him last week. Clara knelt beside the bed and pressed a kiss to his forehead. I'm doing this for you, she whispered. Everything I do is for you. She stayed there for a long time, watching him breathe, memorizing the curve of his cheek and the flutter of his eyelashes. Then she rose and walked to the window. The main house was dark, except for one light. Elijah's study. Clara thought about the way he'd said her name, the way his eyes had softened when he'd told her to be careful, the way his hand had brushed hers. She was supposed to hate him, or at least distrust him. He was her employer, her co-conspirator, a means to an end. But she didn't hate him, and that scared her more than Judge Wade ever could. The next morning, Tommy woke her up before dawn. Mama! Mama, wake up! Clara jolted upright. What is it? What's wrong? Mr. Elijah says I can see the baby horse today. Tommy bounced on the bed. He says I can pet her and everything. Can I go? Please, Mama, please. Clara rubbed her eyes. Mr. McAllister told you that. Last night. He came to see Hattie and I was there and he asked if I wanted to see Star. That's her name. Star. Because she has a white star on her forehead. Clara's heart did something strange. Elijah had come to see Hattie, or had he come to see Tommy? All right. She smoothed Tommy's wild hair. But you have to eat breakfast first. And you do exactly what Mr. McAllister tells you. Tommy was gone before she finished speaking. Clara dressed quickly and went down to the kitchen. Hattie was already at the stove frying bacon. Your boy's got energy, Hattie said without turning around. Reminded me of my own sons when they were that age. You have sons. Had. Hattie's voice didn't change. Lost them in the war. Both of them. Clara's throat tightened. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. Hattie turned and handed Clara a plate. Eat, you're too skinny. Clara sat down at the table. Through the window she could see the barn. Tommy was running toward it, his arms pumping his face split in a grin. Elijah walked out to meet him. He knelt down to Tommy's level and said something that made the boy laugh. He's good with children. Clara said it before she could stop herself. He is. Hattie sat down across from her. Always has been. His daddy wanted grandchildren more than anything. But after Charlotte... Who's Charlotte? Hattie's eyes sharpened. He didn't tell you. He mentioned the name when he caught me in his study. Caught you doing what? Clara looked away. It doesn't matter. Hattie sipped her coffee. Charlotte Hayes. Prettiest girl in 3 counties. She and Eli were engaged for almost a year. Big wedding planned, fancy dress ordered from back east. Whole town invited. What happened? She ran off with his brother, week before the wedding. Hattie set down her cup. Marcus McAllister. Younger Wilder, always jealous of everything Eli had. The two of them disappeared to San Francisco with Marcus's share of the inheritance. Clara thought about the stack of letters on Elijah's desk. The same feminine handwriting on every envelope. She writes to him every month. He never opens them. Hattie shook her head. Some wounds don't heal, Clara. They just scar over and wait for someone to tear them open again. The kitchen door banged open. Tommy burst in, his eyes wild with excitement. Mama! Mama! Mr. Elijah, let me feed Star with a bottle. She drank the whole thing, and then she licked my face. Clara laughed despite herself. Did she? She did. And Mr. Elijah said if I'm good, he'll teach me to ride when I'm bigger. Tommy grabbed her hand. Can I be good, Mama? Can I? You're always good, baby. Elijah appeared in the doorway. His boots were muddy, his shirt rolled up to the elbows. Hay clung to his dark hair. He's a natural, Elijah said. The foal took to him right away. Animals can tell when someone has a good heart. His eyes met Clara's. Something passed between them, something unspoken. Thank you. Clara's voice came out softer than she intended. For being kind to him. Didn't do it to be kind. Elijah shrugged. Did it because the boy deserves it. He turned and walked away. Clara watched him go, her heart beating too fast. Careful, child. Hattie's voice was quiet. That man's been hurt before, and so have you. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. Hattie rose and began clearing dishes. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Clara didn't answer. She didn't know. That night she went to Elijah's study to discuss the next phase of their plan. But when she pushed open the door, she found him standing at the window staring into the darkness. Mr. McAllister. He didn't turn around. Elijah. What? My name is Elijah. After 3 weeks I think you can use it. Clara stepped into the room. Elijah. He turned around. His eyes were red, like he'd been rubbing them. On the desk beside him lay an opened letter. "You read one," Clara said softly. "One of Charlotte's letters." "How do you know about those?" "Hattie told me." Elijah laughed bitterly. "Of course she did." He picked up the letter and held it out. "Read it." Clara hesitated. "That's private." "Read it." She took the letter. The handwriting was elegant, cultured. The words were not. "Dearest Eli, Marcus is dead. Typhoid took him last month. I'm alone now with nothing but debts and regret. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I'm begging you, please let me come home. Please let me make things right. I still love you. I always have. Marcus was a mistake, a terrible mistake, that I've paid for every day since. But you are the only man I've ever truly loved. Please, Eli, please give me another chance. Forever yours, Charlotte." Clara set down the letter. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." Elijah sank into a chair. "Part of me wants to burn it. Part of me wants to ride to San Francisco and bring her home." He looked up at Clara. "Does that make me a fool?" Clara sat down across from him. "It makes you human. She betrayed me, humiliated me, made me a laughingstock in front of everyone I knew. I know. I should hate her. But you don't." Elijah was quiet for a long moment. "When she left, I told myself I'd never trust another woman again. Never let anyone get close enough to hurt me." His eyes found hers. "Then you showed up, you and your boy, and your desperate courage." Clara's breath caught. "Elijah, I'm not saying I trust you." His voice was rough. "I'm not saying I believe everything you've told me. But there's something about you, Clara Whitmore. Something that makes me want to believe." She should have pulled back. Should have reminded him that she was just his housekeeper, his co-conspirator, nothing more. Instead, she reached out and took his hand. "I'm not Charlotte," she said quietly. "I don't want your money or your land or your name. I just want my son to be safe. That's all I've ever wanted." Elijah's fingers tightened around hers. "And if I offered you more than safety?" The question hung in the air between them. Clara pulled her hand away. "Don't. Please." "Why not?" "Because I'm not free." She stood up, putting distance between them. "Wade still has power over me, over Tommy. Until that changes, I can't—" She stopped. "I can't let myself feel things I have no right to feel." Elijah rose too. "Clara." "Good night, Elijah." She walked out of the study and didn't look back. But all the way up the stairs, her hand burned where he'd touched it. And in her chest, something new and terrifying had taken root. Something that felt dangerously like hope. 3 nights later, Clara knelt beside Elijah's bed in the darkness. He was asleep. Really asleep this time, exhausted from 3 days of chasing cattle across the North Range. His boots were still on his clothes, covered in dust. Clara had come to deliver papers to his study. But when she'd seen the light under his bedroom door, she'd pushed it open to check on him. Now she stood watching him breathe, her heart aching with something she couldn't name. She reached down and began to remove his boots. They were caked with mud too heavy for a man to sleep in. She set them carefully beside the bed. Then she pulled the blanket from the foot of the bed and drew it over him, tucking it around his shoulders the way she did for Tommy every night. And then, without planning to, she knelt beside his bed and prayed. "Lord," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I know I ain't got any right to ask you for anything, but this man, he's been hurt so much. By people who should have loved him. By people who only wanted what he could give them." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Please protect him. Please ease the loneliness I see in his eyes. Please send him someone who loves him for who he is, not for what he has." She paused, her voice breaking. "And if it ain't too much trouble, Lord, please help me be worthy of the kindness he's shown me and my son." She stayed there for a long moment, her head bowed, her lips moving in silent prayer. Then she rose to leave. Clara. She froze. Elijah's eyes were open. In the darkness, they gleamed like silver coins. You were awake, she breathed. I was awake. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. Oh God, I'm sorry. I didn't mean I was just... You were praying for me. It wasn't a question. Yes. Elijah sat up slowly. The blanket fell from his shoulders. He reached out and took her hand, pulling her closer until she stood beside his bed. No one has prayed for me since my mother died. His voice was rough. No one has cared enough. Elijah, I don't. He tugged her hand, and she found herself sitting on the edge of his bed. Don't apologize. Don't explain. Just stay. For a minute. Clara's heart hammered. This isn't proper. Nothing about this is proper. His thumb traced circles on her palm. You're my housekeeper. I'm supposed to keep my distance. But I've watched you for 3 weeks, Clara. I've watched you scrub floors until your hands bleed. I've watched you love your son with everything you have. I've watched you stand up to me when anyone else would have cowered. I'm not brave, Clara whispered. I'm just too tired to be afraid. That is bravery. Elijah lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. That's the bravest thing I've ever seen. Clara's breath caught. We shouldn't do this. Probably not. Wade could destroy us both. He could try. She should have pulled away, should have run back to her room and pretended this never happened. Instead, she leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. I'm scared, she admitted. I'm scared of what I feel when I look at you. So am I. His hand came up to cup her cheek. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe alone. They stayed like that for a long moment, forehead to forehead, heart to heart. Then Clara pulled back. Not yet, she said softly. Not until Wade is finished. Not until Tommy is truly safe. Elijah nodded slowly. Then we finish Wade. Together. Together. She rose and walked to the door. At the threshold, she paused. Elijah. Yes. Don't write back to Charlotte. She turned to look at him. She doesn't deserve you. Before he could respond, she slipped out into the hallway and closed the door behind her. But all night long she felt his lips on her hand. And all night long she wondered what she was becoming. A spy. A housekeeper. A woman falling in love with a man she had no right to love. And somewhere in the darkness, Judge Wade's men watched the ranch, waiting for their chance to strike. Clara woke to the sound of horses, not the lazy clopping of ranch hands heading to the pasture. This was thunder, a dozen hooves or more pounding toward the house like a storm that wouldn't wait for morning. She threw off her blanket and ran to the window. In the gray light before dawn, she counted 8 riders. They wore no badges, but she recognized the man at the front. Sheriff Buford Crane, Wade's man. Tommy. Clara shook her son awake. Tommy, get up, now. Mama. The boy's eyes were foggy with sleep. What's happening? I need you to hide. Clara pulled him out of bed and pushed him toward the wardrobe. Get inside and don't make a sound. No matter what you hear, you stay quiet. Do you understand? Tommy's lower lip trembled. I'm scared. I know, baby. Clara kissed his forehead. But you're brave, remember? You're the bravest boy I know. She closed the wardrobe door just as boots thundered up the stairs. The bedroom door crashed open. Sheriff Crane stood in the doorway, his face twisted with something that might have been pleasure. Mrs. Whitmore. He tipped his hat mockingly. Judge Wade sends his regards. What do you want? You know what I want. Crane stepped into the room, his deputies flooding in behind him. The boy. Clara's blood turned to ice. He's not here. Don't lie to me, woman. Crane nodded to his men. Search the room. They tore through everything. The bed, the dresser, Clara's carpet bag with its pitiful contents. One deputy reached for the wardrobe door. No! Clara threw herself between him and the wardrobe. Please, please, he's just a child. A child whose mother has been lying to Judge Wade. Crane grabbed her arm and yanked her aside. Did you think we wouldn't find out the forged documents? The fake bank statements? McAllister's little game. Clara's heart stopped. How? Wade ain't stupid, Mrs. Whitmore. Neither am I. Crane opened the wardrobe door. Tommy sat huddled in the corner, his arms wrapped around his knees. His eyes were huge with terror. Hello, boy. Crane smiled. Time to take a trip. Don't touch him. Clara lunged at the sheriff, but two deputies grabbed her arms. Let me go, Tommy, Tommy. Mama! Tommy screamed as Crane lifted him by the arm. Mama, help me. Bring her too, Crane ordered. Wade wants to deal with both of them personally. They dragged Clara down the stairs, her bare feet scraping against the wood. In the kitchen, Hattie stood frozen by the stove, her face gray with shock. Clara, what's happening? Stay back, old woman. A deputy shoved Hattie aside. This ain't your concern. Like hell it ain't. Hattie grabbed a cast-iron pan from the stove. You let them go right now, or I'll... The deputy backhanded her across the face. Hattie crumpled against the counter, the pan clattering to the floor. Hattie! Clara screamed. Keep moving! Crane pushed her toward the door. McAllister ain't here to save you. He rode out to the North Range before dawn. By the time he gets back, you'll be long gone. They hauled her outside. The morning air was cold against her thin nightgown. Tommy was crying, his small body shaking in Crane's grip. Where are you taking us? Judge Wade's office, then the orphanage for the boy. Crane's smile widened. And for you, I reckon Wade has something special planned. Clara's mind raced. Elijah was miles away. Hattie was hurt. There was no one to help them. Then she heard it. The click of a hammer being pulled back. Put them down, Crane. Deputy Sheriff Nathaniel Harding stepped out from behind the barn, his revolver aimed at Crane's head. He was young, barely 30, but his hand didn't shake. Nate. Crane's smile faded. What do you think you're doing? What I should have done years ago. Nate moved closer, his gun steady. I said put them down. You're making a mistake, boy. Wade will destroy you. Wade's been destroying this county for 20 years. I'm done watching. Nate's jaw tightened. Now let go of that child before I put a bullet between your eyes. Crane hesitated. His deputies looked at each other uncertain. There's 8 of us, and 1 of you, Crane said slowly. You really think you can take us all? He doesn't have to. Pete Dawson emerged from the bunkhouse, rifle in hand. Behind him came 4 more cowboys, all armed, all pointing their weapons at Crane's men. McAllister pays us good wages, Pete said calmly, and Mrs. Whitmore makes the best biscuits in Texas. We ain't letting you take her anywhere. Clara's knees nearly buckled with relief. Crane's face went red. This ain't over. Wade will hear about this. I'm counting on it. Nate stepped forward and took Tommy from Crane's grip. The boy immediately buried his face in Clara's chest. Now get off this property, all of you. The deputies lowered their weapons. One by one they mounted their horses. Crane paused before climbing into his saddle. You just signed your death warrant, Nate. All of you did. Maybe. Nate didn't flinch. But at least we'll die with clean consciences. The riders galloped away, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. Clara collapsed to her knees, clutching Tommy against her. Thank you. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, ma'am. Nate holstered his gun. Crane's right about one thing. This ain't over. Wade will come back with more men, and next time he won't send the sheriff, he'll send killers. Pete knelt beside her. We need to get word to Mr. McAllister. He's a day's ride north. I'll go. Nate was already moving toward the stable. You keep everyone inside and armed. Don't let anyone on this property until Eli gets back." Clara looked up at him. "Why are you doing this? Wade could destroy your career, your life." Nate paused. Something flickered in his eyes. Shame, maybe. Or regret. "My daddy was a good man," he said quietly. "A farmer. He worked that land for 30 years. Then Wade decided he wanted it, forged some papers, bribed a judge, and took everything my family owned." His voice hardened. "My daddy hung himself in the barn 3 days later. My mama died of a broken heart 6 months after that." Clara's throat tightened. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Help me stop him." Nate swung onto his horse. "I'll be back with McAllister by tomorrow night. Just stay alive until then." He rode off at a gallop. Pete helped Clara to her feet. "Come on, ma'am. Let's get you and the boy inside." They found Hattie sitting at the kitchen table, pressing a cold cloth to her swollen cheek. She looked up when Clara entered. "Lord have mercy." Hattie reached for Tommy. "Come here, child. Let Hattie hold you." Tommy ran into her arms, sobbing. "They know." Clara's voice shook. "About the forged documents. About everything. Someone told them." "Who?" Pete's face was grim. "We ain't got no traitors on this ranch." "Then how did Wade find out?" Clara sank into a chair. "Elijah was so careful. We were so careful." Hattie was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice heavy. "There's been a man coming around the past few days, asking questions in town about the ranch, about Mr. Eli." She paused. "Young fella, dark hair, charming smile." Clara's blood went cold. "What was his name?" "Didn't catch it. But he had fancy clothes. City clothes." Hattie met her eyes. "And he looked just like Mr. Eli. Same jaw, same eyes." "Marcus." The name came out like a curse. "Elijah's brother." "His brother?" Pete shook his head. "Mr. Eli ain't got no brother. Not anymore." "He does. Marcus McAllister. The one who ran off with his fiancée." Clara stood up, her mind racing. Charlotte wrote to Elijah, told him Marcus was dead. But what if she was lying? What if Marcus is working with Wade? The pieces fell into place. Charlotte's letter arriving just as Clara was getting close to Elijah. Marcus appearing in town asking questions. Wade suddenly knowing about the forged documents. It wasn't coincidence. It was a trap. "They want the ranch," Clara breathed. "Charlotte and Marcus. They want everything. Then they're gonna have to go through all of us to get it." Pete moved to the window, rifle ready. "I'll keep watch. You stay with the boy." Clara nodded numbly. She gathered Tommy from Hattie's arms and carried him upstairs to their room. "Mama?" Tommy's voice was small. "Are the bad men coming back?" "I don't know, baby." Clara held him close. "But I won't let them hurt you. I promise." "What about Mr. Elijah? Will he come back?" Clara thought about Elijah miles away on the North Range, not knowing that everything was falling apart. She thought about the way he'd kissed her hand, the way he'd said he'd rather be scared with her than safe alone. "Yes." Her voice was steady, despite the fear clawing at her chest. "He'll come back. Promise?" Clara closed her eyes. "I promise." The day dragged on. Clara couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. She paced the room while Tommy dozed fitfully on the bed. When darkness fell, she went downstairs. Hattie was still at her post in the kitchen, a shotgun across her lap. "You should rest," Clara said. "Can't rest when wolves are circling." Hattie gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit with me a spell." Clara sat. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "I've known Eli McAllister since he was a baby," Hattie finally said. "Watched him grow from a wild boy into a hard man. Watched the world beat him down again and again." "What happened to him before Charlotte, I mean?" Hattie sighed. "His mama died giving birth to his baby sister. The baby died too. Eli was 8 years old. He blamed himself for not being able to save them. She paused. Then his daddy got hard, cold, threw himself into the ranch and expected Eli to do the same. No time for grief, no time for tears, just work. Clara's heart ached. He never learned to let anyone in. Not until Charlotte came along. She was the first person he trusted since his mama died. The first person he let see the soft parts of him. Hattie's voice hardened. And she ripped them out and stomped on them. I won't do that to him. The words came out before Clara could stop them. I'm not Charlotte. Hattie studied her face. I know you ain't child. That's what scares me. What do you mean? Charlotte broke his heart because she didn't love him. You... Hattie paused. You could break it because you do. Clara looked away. I don't know what I feel. Yes, you do. Hattie reached across the table and took her hand. The question is whether you're brave enough to admit it. Before Clara could respond, the front door burst open. Elijah strode in covered in dust and sweat. His eyes were wild, his breath coming in gasps. Clara! He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. Thank God. Nate told me everything. I rode all night. Clara pressed her face against his chest. She could hear his heart pounding through his shirt. They came for Tommy. They would have taken him if Nate and Pete hadn't. I know. His arms tightened around her. I know. But you're safe now. I'm here. Elijah. She pulled back to look at him. There's something else. Something you need to know. She told him about Marcus, about Charlotte's letter, about the trap that had been set. Elijah's face went still. Then it went hard. Marcus. He spoke the name like it burned his tongue. He's supposed to be dead. Charlotte lied. They're working together. They want the ranch. They want more than the ranch. Elijah pulled away and began to pace. They want revenge. Marcus always hated that father left me in charge. He thought the ranch should have been split equally. So he's using Wade to take it from you. And Wade is using him to get to me. Elijah stopped pacing. His hands were shaking. This was never about documents or land deals. This is personal. All of it. What are we going to do? Elijah turned to face her. In his eyes, she saw something she'd never seen before. Fury. Pure, cold, controlled fury. We're going to end this, tonight. They rode into town at midnight. Elijah, Clara, Nate, and Pete. 4 against an empire. Judge Wade's office was dark, but a light burned in the upstairs window of his mansion next door. He was home. Waiting. Stay here. Elijah dismounted and handed his reins to Pete. If things go wrong, get Clara and Tommy out of the county. There's a family in Austin who owes me a favor. They'll keep them safe. I'm not staying here. Clara slid from her horse. I started this. I'm going to finish it. Clara. No. She stepped in front of him. For 5 years I let men tell me what to do, when to speak, when to stay silent, when to be afraid. Her voice didn't shake. That ends tonight. I'm coming with you. Elijah stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Stay behind me. If shooting starts, you run. Understood? Understood. They walked up the steps of Wade's mansion together. Elijah didn't knock. He kicked the door open. The foyer was empty, but voices drifted from the parlor at the end of the hall. Told you he'd come. My brother always was predictable. Clara recognized the voice. It was smooth, charming. The kind of voice that could sell snake oil to a preacher. Marcus McAllister. Elijah pushed open the parlor door. 3 people sat inside. Judge Wade in his usual chair, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Charlotte Hayes on the settee, beautiful in a silk dress that cost more than Clara's entire life. And Marcus McAllister standing by the fireplace, looking like a younger, softer version of Elijah. Brother. Marcus spread his arms. So good to see you. It's been too long. Not long enough. Elijah's hand rested on his gun. I should have known you weren't dead. The devil doesn't take his own. Such hostility. Marcus shook his head sadly. And here I thought we could discuss this like civilized men. There's nothing civilized about you. Elijah's voice was ice. You stole my fiancée. You stole your inheritance. And now you're trying to steal my home. Our home. Marcus's smile faded. Father's home. The home he built while I got shipped off to boarding schools and summer camps. The home you got to enjoy while I was treated like an embarrassment. You were an embarrassment. You gambled. You drank. You chased women who weren't yours. I was a boy looking for attention from a father who only had eyes for his perfect eldest son. Marcus's charming facade cracked. Do you know what it's like to grow up invisible? To know that no matter what you do, you'll never be good enough. So this is revenge. Elijah shook his head. All of this, Charlotte, Wade, the forged documents, it's all just you throwing a tantrum because Daddy didn't love you enough. Marcus's face went red. Don't you dare. Eli. Charlotte stood up, her voice soft. Please, let me explain. I don't want your explanations. Elijah didn't look at her. I don't want anything from you. I made a mistake. Charlotte moved toward him, her eyes filling with tears. Marcus promised me adventure excitement, but all he gave me was debt and disappointment. She reached for his arm. You were the one I should have chosen. You were always the one. Clara watched the scene unfold, watched Charlotte's practiced tears, her calculated vulnerability. She's lying. The words came out before Clara could stop them. She's been lying since the moment she wrote that letter. Charlotte's eyes snapped to Clara. Who are you? Someone who knows what a liar looks like. Clara stepped forward. You didn't come back because you love Elijah. You came back because Marcus is broke, because Wade promised you a cut of the ranch if you helped take it. That's ridiculous. Is it? Clara turned to Wade. Tell them. Tell them about the deal you made, the land you promised them if they helped you destroy Elijah. Wade set down his whiskey. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Nate's voice came from the doorway. He stepped into the room, a leather satchel in his hand. Because I've got the documents to prove it. He threw the satchel onto the floor. Papers spilled out. Contracts, bank records, letters bearing Wade's signature. I've been collecting these for 3 years, Nate said. Evidence of every bribe, every forged deed, every family you've destroyed. And tomorrow morning, all of it goes to the federal court in Austin. Wade's face went pale. You can't. I already have. Nate smiled grimly. A copy is on its way to the territorial governor as we speak. By this time next week, you'll be in chains. For a moment, no one moved. Then Marcus grabbed Charlotte and shoved her toward Elijah. Shoot him, Marcus screamed at Wade. Shoot them all. Wade reached for the gun on his desk, but Elijah was faster. His revolver cleared the holster before Wade's fingers touched the weapon. The shot echoed through the room, and the gun flew from Wade's grasp, skittering across the floor. Nobody move. Elijah's voice was calm, deadly. The next bullet goes between someone's eyes. Marcus held up his hands. Eli, brother, let's talk about this. We're done talking. Elijah stepped toward him. You want the ranch. You want Father's legacy. Come and take it. I don't want to fight you. Then leave. Take Charlotte and whatever's left of your miserable life and get out of Texas. If I ever see your face again, I'll kill you. Marcus looked at Charlotte. Charlotte looked at the floor. Fine. Marcus lowered his hands. Keep your ranch. Keep your dusty cattle and your empty house. I never wanted it anyway. He grabbed Charlotte's arm and pulled her toward the door. Marcus. Charlotte tried to pull free. We can still... Shut up. Marcus didn't slow down. This is your fault. All of it. They disappeared into the night. Elijah turned to Wade. The judge sat slumped in his chair, all the power drained from his face. "You're finished," Elijah said quietly. 20 years of corruption. 20 years of destroying innocent people. It ends now. Wade's lips trembled. "You don't understand. I had debts, obligations. I did what I had to do." "No." Clara stepped forward. "You did what you wanted to do. You enjoyed it. Every family you destroyed, every child you threatened." Her voice shook with fury. "You threatened to take my son, my boy. You used him as a weapon against me. You were just evil." Clara leaned close to him. "And now you're going to pay for every tear you ever caused." Wade looked at her with something like fear in his eyes. "Who are you?" he whispered. Clara straightened up. "I'm Clara Whitmore, and I'm the woman who just helped bring you down." Nate moved forward with a pair of handcuffs. "Cornelius Wade, you're under arrest for conspiracy fraud and attempted kidnapping. You have the right to remain silent, though I doubt you will." He snapped the cuffs around Wade's wrists. The judge who had terrorized Wheeler County for 2 decades was led out of his own mansion like a common criminal. Clara stood in the empty parlor, her hands trembling. It was over. After weeks of fear and lies and desperation, it was finally over. "Clara," she turned. Elijah stood behind her, his gun still in his hand. "You shouldn't have come," he said. "It was too dangerous." "I had to." She met his eyes. "I had to see it end." He holstered his revolver and crossed the room to her. His hands came up to cup her face. "You were magnificent," he said softly. "Standing up to Wade like that. I've never seen anything braver." "I'm not brave. I was terrified." "Bravery isn't the absence of fear." His thumb traced her cheek. "It's doing what needs to be done despite the fear." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Is it really over?" "It's really over." Elijah pulled her against his chest. "Wade will go to prison. Marcus and Charlotte are gone. You and Tommy are safe." "And what about us?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "What happens now?" Elijah pulled back to look at her. "That depends on you." "What do you mean?" "I mean—" He took a deep breath. "I'm not good at this, Clara. I've been alone for so long, I've forgotten how to be anything else. But when I'm with you, I remember. I remember what it feels like to hope, to trust, to want something more than just survival." Clara's heart pounded. "Elijah." "Let me finish." He took her hands in his. "I know I'm difficult. I know I'm broken. I know you deserve someone better, someone whole. But if you'll have me, if you'll let me try." His voice cracked. "I want to be the man you prayed for, the man who deserves your faith." Tears streamed down Clara's face. "I didn't pray for a perfect man," she whispered. "I prayed for you." Elijah's breath caught. Then he kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative. The kiss of a man who'd forgotten how to be tender. But then Clara's arms came up around his neck, and the kiss deepened into something else. Something that felt like coming home. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were trembling. "Take me home," Clara whispered. "Take me back to Tommy." "Our boy," Elijah said softly. Clara's eyes widened. "What?" "If you'll let me." His voice was rough with emotion. "I want to adopt him. I want to give him my name. I want to be his father." Clara couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "Yes." The word came out as a sob. "Yes." Elijah pulled her close again, and in the ruins of a corrupt man's empire, 2 broken people held each other and dared to believe in a future neither of them had ever imagined. Tommy was asleep when they returned to the ranch. Hattie met them at the door, her shotgun still in her hands. "Well, it's done." Elijah helped Clara down from her horse. Wade's in custody. Marcus and Charlotte are gone. Gone where? Don't know. Don't care. Elijah's arm stayed around Clara's waist. As long as they're not in Texas. Hattie's eyes moved from Elijah's face to Clara's, then down to his arm wrapped protectively around her. A slow smile spread across her weathered face. About time, she said. I was starting to think you two would dance around each other forever. Clara felt her cheeks flush. Hattie? Don't Hattie me, child. I've got eyes. She stepped aside to let them in. Now get some rest. Both of you. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Clara climbed the stairs to check on Tommy. He was curled up in bed, clutching the wooden horse Pete had carved for him. His face was peaceful in sleep, no trace of the terror he'd felt that morning. She sat on the edge of the bed and brushed the hair from his forehead. Mama. Shh. Go back to sleep, baby. Tommy's eyes fluttered open. Are the bad men gone? They're gone. Forever. Promise. Clara leaned down and kissed his cheek. I promise. Tommy's small hand reached up and touched her face. You've been crying. Happy tears. Clara smiled through the moisture still clinging to her lashes. Sometimes people cry when they're happy. That's silly. Maybe. But it's true. She tucked the blanket around him. Go back to sleep. I'll be right here when you wake up. Will Mr. Elijah be here too? Clara's heart skipped. Why do you ask? Because he makes you smile. Tommy's eyes were already closing, and he promised to teach me to ride. Clara stayed by his bed until his breathing deepened into sleep. Then she slipped out of the room and found Elijah waiting in the hallway. He's all right. Elijah's voice was soft. He's perfect. Clara closed the door gently. He asked if you'd be here in the morning. What did you tell him? I didn't know what to tell him. Clara met his eyes. What do I tell him, Elijah? What are we doing? Elijah stepped closer. I thought I made myself clear in Wade's parlor. You said you wanted to adopt him. You said... Clara stopped. But that was in the heat of the moment. Things were happening so fast. I need to know if you meant it. I meant every word. Elijah took her hands. Clara, I've spent 10 years building walls around my heart, telling myself I didn't need anyone, that I was better off alone. His grip tightened. Then you came along and tore those walls down without even trying. I didn't mean to. I know you didn't. That's what made it real. He lifted her hands to his lips and kissed her knuckles. I love you, Clara Whitmore. I love your strength, your courage, your stubborn refusal to give up even when everything was against you. And I love that boy sleeping in there like he's my own flesh and blood. Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. You barely know us. I know enough. Elijah released her hands and reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box. This was my mother's. She told my father to give it to the woman who would make this house a home. Clara's breath caught. Elijah. He opened the box. Inside was a simple gold ring with a small diamond that caught the lamplight. It ain't fancy, he said, but it's real, like us. Are you asking me to marry you? I'm asking you to stay. His voice cracked. I'm asking you to let me love you and that boy for the rest of my days. I'm asking you to take a broken man and help him become whole. Clara looked at the ring, then at the man holding it. She thought about Daniel, who had promised her everything and given her nothing but pain. She thought about the years of fear and loneliness and wondering if she'd ever feel safe again. And she thought about Elijah, who had every reason to distrust her but chose to believe instead. Yes. The word came out as a whisper. Yes. Elijah's face transformed. The hardness that had lived there for so long melted away, replaced by something Clara had never seen. Joy. Pure, unguarded joy. He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. It's like it was made for you, he said softly. Maybe it was. Clara threw her arms around his neck. Maybe everything that happened, all the pain, all the fear, all the running, Maybe it was all leading us here. To each other. To home. Elijah held her close, his chin resting on top of her head. "We'll do this right," he said. "A proper wedding. The whole town invited. I want everyone to know that Clara Whitmore is my wife. The town will talk, the wealthy rancher marrying his housekeeper. Let them talk." Elijah pulled back to look at her. "I don't care about their opinions. I only care about yours." Clara laughed through her tears. "My opinion is that you should kiss me again." He obliged. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of planning and preparation. Word of Wade's arrest spread through Wheeler County like wildfire. The federal marshals arrived from Austin to transport him to the territorial prison where he would await trial for his crimes. Families he had victimized for decades came forward to testify. The list of charges grew longer every day. Nate Harding was appointed acting sheriff. His first official act was to publicly apologize to every family Wade had wronged and promise a new era of justice in the county. And in the midst of it all, Elijah and Clara planned their wedding. Hattie took charge of the preparations with military precision. She recruited half the ranch hands to help clean the house from top to bottom. She ordered fabric from Austin for Clara's dress. She bullied the local preacher into performing the ceremony on short notice. "You're enjoying this too much," Clara told her one morning. "Damn right I am." Hattie grinned. "I've been waiting 10 years for that man to find happiness. You think I'm gonna let anything spoil it now?" Tommy appointed himself official wedding supervisor. He followed Elijah everywhere, peppering him with questions about horses and cattle and what it meant to be a father. "Will I call you Papa?" Tommy asked one afternoon, while Elijah was brushing down his horse. Elijah's hands stilled on the brush. "You can call me whatever feels right to you." "What did you call your papa?" "Father." "But he wasn't—" Elijah paused. "He wasn't the kind of man you could get close to. Not after my mother died." Tommy considered this. "I never had a papa. Daniel didn't count. He was mean." "I know." Elijah set down the brush and knelt to Tommy's level. "I promise I'll never be mean to you or your mama. I'll protect you both with my life. Even from the bad men. Especially from the bad men." Tommy nodded solemnly. Then his face brightened. "Can I call you Pa?" Elijah's throat tightened. "I'd like that." Tommy threw his arms around Elijah's neck. "I always wanted a pa, and I always wanted a son." Elijah hugged him back, blinking against the moisture in his eyes. "Looks like we both got what we wanted." From the barn door, Clara watched them with tears streaming down her face. The wedding was scheduled for Saturday. On Friday evening, a rider appeared at the ranch gate. Pete saw him first and raised the alarm. Within minutes, every man on the property was armed and ready. But the rider wasn't hostile. He was exhausted, dusty, barely able to stay in his saddle. "Message for Mr. McAllister." The rider gasped. "From Austin. Urgent." Elijah took the envelope and tore it open. As he read, his face went pale. "Eli." Clara moved to his side. "What is it?" "Wade escaped." Elijah's voice was flat. 2 days ago, killed a guard and disappeared." The blood drained from Clara's face. "Where is he?" "Nobody knows." Elijah crumpled the letter in his fist. "But there's more. Charlotte was spotted in El Paso 3 days ago. She was asking about Marcus. Seems like they had a falling out." "What does that mean for us?" "It means they're both out there, both dangerous, both with reasons to want us dead." Elijah turned to Pete. "Double the guard. Nobody comes or goes without my say-so." "What about the wedding?" Clara's voice shook. "Should we postpone?" "No." Elijah's jaw set. "We're not letting them take one more thing from us. The wedding happens tomorrow just like we planned." "But if Wade is out there, then he'll find a ranch full of armed men and a whole town of witnesses." Elijah took her hands. "I won't live in fear, Clara, and I won't let you live in fear either. We've earned this happiness. We're not giving it up." Clara wanted to argue, wanted to point out the danger, the risk, the foolishness of celebrating while their enemies roamed free. But when she looked into Elijah's eyes, she saw something she couldn't refuse. Hope. Stubborn, defiant hope. "All right," she said. "We get married tomorrow." Elijah pulled her close. "That's my girl." But that night, neither of them slept well. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. Clara stood in Hattie's room staring at herself in the mirror. The dress was simple white cotton, with lace at the collar, sewn by her own hands, with help from Hattie. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive. But when she looked at her reflection, she saw something she hadn't seen in years. A bride. A woman worthy of being loved. "You look beautiful, child." Hattie adjusted the small veil pinned to Clara's hair. "Your mama would be proud. I wish she could be here." "Maybe she is." Hattie squeezed her shoulder. "The ones we love never really leave us. They just watch from somewhere we can't see." A knock sounded at the door. "Come in," Clara called. Tommy peeked inside, his face scrubbed clean, his hair slicked back with water. He wore a new shirt Hattie had made for him, white like his mother's dress. "Mama!" His eyes went wide. "You look like an angel." Clara laughed. "Not quite, but thank you. Pa sent me to get you. He says the preacher's here and everyone's waiting." Pa. The word still made Clara's heart flutter. "Tell him I'll be right down." Tommy ran off. Clara took one last look in the mirror. "Ready?" Hattie asked. "Ready." They walked down the stairs together. Through the kitchen, out the back door, across the yard to where the ceremony would take place. The ranch hands had set up chairs near the old oak tree. The preacher stood beneath its branches, Bible in hand. Cowboys in their Sunday best sat on one side. Townsfolk who had come to witness the unlikely union sat on the other. And at the end of the makeshift aisle stood Elijah. He wore a dark suit Clara had never seen before, his hair combed back, his boots polished to a shine. But it was his face that stopped her breath. He was looking at her like she was the sunrise after the longest night of his life. Clara walked toward him. One step, then another. The faces around her blurred. The sounds faded. There was only Elijah waiting for her, his eyes never leaving hers. When she reached him, he took her hands. "You're here," he whispered. "Where else would I be?" The preacher cleared his throat. "Dearly beloved." A gunshot split the air. Women screamed. Men dove for cover. Clara felt Elijah's body slam into hers, pushing her to the ground as a second shot cracked overhead. "Stay down!" Elijah shouted. He pulled his revolver and scanned the tree line. "There!" Pete pointed toward the road. "Two riders." Clara looked up in time to see them. Judge Wade on a black horse, and beside him Charlotte Hayes, her silk dress replaced by riding clothes, her beautiful face twisted with hate. "You thought you could destroy me," Wade's voice carried across the yard. "You thought you could take everything I built." Elijah rose to his feet, placing himself between Clara and the riders. "It's over, Wade. You've got nowhere to go." "Maybe not." Wade aimed his pistol at Clara. "But neither do you." Time slowed. Clara saw Wade's finger tighten on the trigger, saw Charlotte's smile of triumph, saw her entire future about to end in a single moment of violence. Then Elijah moved. He threw himself in front of her just as the gun fired. The bullet caught him in the chest. "Elijah!" Clara caught him as he fell. Blood spread across his white shirt, turning it crimson. "No, no, no! Elijah, look at me!" His eyes found hers. "Clara, don't talk. Don't move. Someone get help." She pressed her hands against the wound, but blood kept pouring between her fingers. "Stay with me, please, please." Around them, chaos erupted. Pete and the ranch hands opened fire on Wade. Nate came running from the house, pistol drawn, but Clara saw none of it. She saw only Elijah, his face going pale, his breath coming in shallow gasps. The ring, he whispered. Still. Wearing it. Clara looked at her hand covered in his blood. The diamond glinted through the red. I'm wearing it, she sobbed. I'll always wear it. Good. His hand came up trembling to touch her cheek. Wanted to see you, in that dress. You're going to be fine. We're going to get married. We're going to raise Tommy together. You promised me. Remember, you promised. Clara. His voice was fading. Tell the boy. Tell him I was proud. To be his pa. Tell him yourself. Tears poured down her face. Don't you dare leave me. Don't you dare. Love. You. His eyes closed. Elijah. The gunfire stopped. Someone was shouting that Wade was down, that Charlotte had fled, that it was over. But Clara heard none of it. She pulled Elijah's body against her chest and screamed until her voice gave out. Hattie reached her first. The old woman dropped to her knees and pressed her fingers to Elijah's neck. He's alive, Hattie said sharply. Barely. Get him inside, now. Pete and two other men lifted Elijah's limp body and carried him toward the house. Clara stumbled after them, her white dress soaked in blood. Tommy, she gasped. Where's Tommy? I've got him. Nate held the boy in his arms, shielding him from the carnage. He's safe. Mama. Tommy's voice was small, terrified. Is Pa dead? Clara looked at her son, at the fear in his eyes, the same fear she'd spent years trying to protect him from. No, she said, though she didn't know if it was true. Pa's gonna be fine. They laid Elijah on the dining room table. Hattie cut away his shirt and examined the wound. Bullet's still in there, she said. We need a doctor. Closest one's in town, Pete said. 20 minutes there, 20 back. He doesn't have 40 minutes. Hattie grabbed a bottle of whiskey and poured it over her hands. I've dug out bullets before, during the war. Hold him down. Clara took Elijah's hand. I'm here. I'm right here. Hattie worked quickly, her fingers steady despite the blood. Clara watched the woman she'd come to love like a mother save the man she loved more than life itself. The minutes stretched into hours. Or maybe it was only moments. Clara couldn't tell anymore. Finally, Hattie held up a bloody piece of lead. Got it. She grabbed needle and thread. He's lost a lot of blood, but the bullet missed his heart. If we can keep infection out, he's got a chance. A chance. Clara broke down sobbing. They moved Elijah to his bedroom. Clara sat beside him through the night, holding his hand, whispering prayers she hadn't spoken since her mother died. Please. Her voice was hoarse from crying. Please don't take him from me. Not now. Not after everything we've been through. Tommy crept into the room near dawn. He climbed onto the bed beside Elijah and pressed his small body against the man he'd started calling Pa. Wake up, Tommy whispered. You promised to teach me to ride. You can't break a promise. Elijah didn't move. Clara pulled Tommy close. They lay there together, the three of them, while the sun rose over the ranch and painted the room in shades of gold. Somewhere outside a rooster crowed, and beneath Clara's hand, Elijah's fingers twitched. His eyes fluttered open. Clara? His voice was barely a whisper. That you? It's me. She laughed and cried at the same time. I'm here. We're both here. Tommy sat up, his face splitting into a grin. Pa, you're awake. Hey, son. Elijah's voice was weak, but his eyes were clear. Did I miss the wedding? Clara leaned down and pressed her forehead to his. We'll have another one, she said. 100 more. I don't care. Just one. His hand came up shaking to touch her face. Just need one. Hattie appeared in the doorway. When she saw Elijah's eyes open, she sagged against the frame. Lord have mercy. She wiped her eyes with her apron. That man's too stubborn to die. Damn right, Elijah whispered. Clara laughed through her tears. Outside, the sun continued to rise. Wade was dead. Charlotte had vanished. And the man Clara loved was alive. Wounded. Weak. But alive. And that was enough. That was everything. 3 weeks passed before Elijah could stand on his own. Clara spent every hour by his side, changing bandages, spooning broth into his mouth, reading to him when he couldn't sleep. Tommy kept vigil, too, curled up at the foot of the bed like a faithful dog, refusing to leave, even when Hattie tried to coax him away with cookies. "You're smothering me," Elijah complained one morning, though his eyes were soft. "You got shot," Clara said flatly. "You don't get an opinion." "In my own house? Especially in your own house?" She adjusted his pillow with more force than necessary. "You want to argue? Wait until you can walk to the outhouse without help." Elijah opened his mouth to protest, but Hattie appeared in the doorway. "Letter came," she said. "From Austin." Clara took the envelope and tore it open. As she read, her face went through several emotions: surprise, relief, and finally something that looked like satisfaction. "Charlotte's been arrested." Clara looked up. They caught her trying to board a ship to Mexico. She's being charged as an accessory to Wade's crimes. "Good." Elijah's voice was hard. "Let her rot." "There's more." Clara scanned the rest of the letter. "The territorial governor is awarding you a commendation for your role in bringing down Wade's corruption ring." "I don't want a commendation. I want to get out of this bed." "Too bad." Clara folded the letter and tucked it into her pocket. "You're getting both." Tommy scrambled up from the foot of the bed. "Does this mean the bad lady is gone too, like the bad judge?" "Yes, baby." Clara smoothed his hair. "All the bad people are gone. Forever. Forever." Tommy's face broke into a grin. He turned to Elijah. "Pa, can we have the wedding now? You promised." Elijah looked at Clara. Something passed between them, a question, an answer, a promise renewed. "Soon as I can stand at that altar without falling over," Elijah said. "We'll have the biggest wedding this county's ever seen." "How big?" "Big enough that people will be talking about it for the next 50 years. Tommy's eyes went wide. "That's really big." "That's the point." Elijah reached out and ruffled the boy's hair. "When a man finds something worth celebrating, he doesn't do it halfway." 2 more weeks passed. Elijah grew stronger every day. He started walking the hallways, then the stairs, then the yard. The bullet wound healed into a scar that would mark him forever, but he wore it like a badge of honor. "Does it hurt?" Clara asked one evening, tracing the raised tissue with her fingertips. "Sometimes." Elijah covered her hand with his. "But it reminds me of what I almost lost, and what I'm never letting go." "You scared me." Her voice trembled. "When you fell, I thought—" "I know." He pulled her close. "But I'm still here, and I'm not going anywhere." Clara pressed her face against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I love you," she whispered. "I know that too." His arms tightened around her. "You showed me. Every day. Every prayer. Every tear you shed by my bedside. You were awake." "Sometimes." He kissed the top of her head. "I heard you talking to God, begging him to let me live, promising you'd never ask for anything else if he just gave you more time with me. I meant it. I know you did." Elijah tilted her chin up to look at him. "That's why I fought so hard to come back. Because I finally had something worth living for." The new wedding was planned for the first Sunday in September. This time there would be no interruptions. Nate stationed armed deputies at every entrance to the property. Pete organized the ranch hands into a security detail. Even Hattie kept a pistol hidden under her apron. "You think I'm letting anyone ruin this day?" Hattie said when Clara tried to protest. "Over my dead body." "Don't say that. Figure of speech, child." Hattie patted her hand. "Now stop worrying and put on your dress." The dress was new. Clara had sewn it herself over the past 2 weeks, working by candlelight while Elijah slept. white cotton like before, but with delicate embroidery at the hem, bluebonnets and wild roses, the flowers that grew in the fields around the ranch. "Mama, you look like a princess," Tommy breathed when he saw her. "Princesses wear crowns." Clara adjusted her simple veil. "I'm just a woman who got lucky." "You're the prettiest woman in the whole world." "Second prettiest." Clara knelt down and kissed his cheek. "Your grandma was the first. The one who died. The one who's watching from heaven." Clara straightened his collar. "She would have loved you, Tommy. So much." "She can see us." "I believe she can." Tommy considered this. "Then she'll see me walk you down the aisle." Clara's heart swelled. "That's right. You're giving me away." "I don't want to give you away." Tommy's brow furrowed. "Can't I keep you?" "Oh, baby." Clara laughed through sudden tears. "You're not really giving me away. You're just walking me to Pa. Then we all stay together. Forever. Promise? Cross my heart." The ceremony was set for high noon. Clara stood at the back of the makeshift aisle, Tommy's small hand clutched in hers. Ahead of her, Elijah waited beneath the oak tree, his dark suit pressed, his hair combed, his eyes never leaving her face. The preacher stood ready. The guests sat in neat rows, cowboys and townsfolk, neighbors and friends. Even people who had doubted the match had come to witness what everyone now called the love story of Wheeler County. "Ready, Mama?" Tommy asked. "Ready." They walked together, one step, then another. The congregation rose to their feet. Clara kept her eyes on Elijah, on the man who had given her shelter when she had nothing, who had trusted her when he had every reason not to, who had taken a bullet meant for her heart. When she reached him, Tommy placed her hand in Elijah's. "Take care of her," the boy said solemnly, "or I'll be real mad." The crowd laughed. Elijah knelt down to Tommy's level. "I promise," he said, "on my life." Tommy nodded satisfied and went to stand beside Hattie. The preacher opened his Bible. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." "Wait." Everyone turned. Nate Harding was pushing through the crowd, his face pale, a telegram clutched in his hand. Clara's heart stopped. "Not again. Please, not again." "What is it?" Elijah's voice was sharp. Nate reached the altar, breathing hard. "Just got this from Austin. Thought you should know before—" He trailed off, glancing at Clara. "Before you said your vows." Elijah took the telegram. As he read, his face went through a series of emotions. Shock, disbelief. And then, he laughed. "What?" Clara grabbed his arm. "What does it say?" Elijah handed her the telegram. His eyes were bright with something she couldn't name. "Marcus McAllister found dead in San Francisco. Typhoid. Charlotte's claim to McAllister estate nullified. All charges against her to proceed. Condolences." Clara read it twice. "Marcus is really dead this time. Looks like Charlotte's lies caught up with her." Elijah shook his head. "She told me he died to manipulate me. Turns out fate had the same idea. Is it wrong that I'm relieved? It's human." Elijah took the telegram and tucked it into his pocket. "Now, where were we?" The preacher cleared his throat. "Dearly beloved." "We heard that part," Hattie called out. "Skip to the good stuff." More laughter rippled through the crowd. The preacher smiled and flipped a few pages. "Do you, Elijah James McAllister, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" Elijah's eyes never left Clara's face. "I do." "And do you, Clara Jane Whitmore, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" Clara thought about everything that had led her to this moment. The abuse, the poverty, the desperation that had driven her to Wade's door, the fear that had followed her like a shadow for so long. And now here she was, standing before God and man, about to marry a man who loved her, not for what she could give him, but for who she truly was. "I do," she said, "with all my heart." "Then by the power vested in me, by the territory of Texas, I now pronounce you husband and wife." The preacher closed his Bible. "You may kiss your bride." Elijah pulled Clara into his arms and kissed her like a man who had been waiting his whole life for this moment. The crowd erupted in cheers. Cowboys threw their hats in the air. Women dabbed at their eyes. Tommy broke free from Hattie and ran to his parents, throwing his arms around both of them. "We're a family now," he asked, his face pressed against Elijah's leg. "We've been a family for a while, son." Elijah lifted him up and settled him on his hip. "Now it's just official." The reception lasted until long after dark. There was food more than Clara had ever seen in one place. Barbecued beef and roasted chicken, fresh bread, and apple pie cakes and cookies, and enough whiskey to float a boat. There was music, fiddles and guitars, old songs about love and loss, and the long roads that brought people home. And there was dancing. Clara had never danced before, not really, but Elijah guided her through the steps like he'd been doing it all his life. "Where did you learn this?" she asked as he spun her across the makeshift dance floor. "My mother taught me." His voice was soft. "Before she died. She said a man who couldn't dance was only half a man." "She sounds wonderful." She was. Elijah pulled her closer. "She would have loved you, Clara, almost as much as I do." "Almost. Nobody could love you as much as I do." He kissed her forehead. "It's not possible." As the night wore on, the guests began to drift away. Cowboys headed back to the bunkhouse. Townsfolk climbed into wagons and carriages, waving goodbye as they disappeared down the road. Finally, only family remained. Elijah and Clara. Tommy half asleep in Hattie's arms. The old woman who had become grandmother, mother, and friend all at once. "Get that boy to bed," Elijah said. "And get yourself some rest too, Hattie. You've earned it." "Don't I know it?" Hattie shifted Tommy's weight and headed for the stairs. "You two behave yourselves now." "We're married," Clara called after her. "We can misbehave all we want." Hattie's laughter echoed through the house. Elijah took Clara's hand and led her outside. They walked together to the oak tree where they'd been married, where they'd nearly lost everything, where they'd found each other again. "I have something for you," Elijah said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Clara took it, confused. "What is this?" "Open it." She unfolded the document and read by the light of the moon. Her breath caught. "Adoption papers," she whispered. "For Tommy. Filed and approved this morning." Elijah's voice was thick. "He's legally my son now, Thomas McAllister. Has a nice ring to it, don't you think?" Clara couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched the paper to her chest. "You didn't have to do this," she finally managed. "You already treat him like your own." "I did have to do it." Elijah cupped her face in his hands. "I needed the world to know that boy is mine. That nothing and no one can ever take him from us. Elijah, you gave me hope when I had none." His voice broke. "You showed me that love wasn't a weakness, it was a strength. You knelt beside my bed and prayed for my happiness when you thought I couldn't hear." "I remember. Every word." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Every single word. That prayer saved my life, Clara. Long before Wade's bullet. You saved me just by believing I was worth saving." Clara wrapped her arms around his neck and held on tight. "Take me home," she whispered against his lips. "Take me to our room, our bed, our life." "Our forever," Elijah said. "Our forever." He swept her into his arms and carried her toward the house. Clara laughed, really laughed, for the first time in years. The sound echoed across the ranch, mingling with the chirp of crickets and the whisper of wind through the grass. Above them, stars scattered across the Texas sky like diamonds on black velvet. And somewhere up there, Clara believed her mother was smiling. Years passed. The ranch prospered under Elijah's steady hand and Clara's careful management. They added more land, more cattle, more hands to work the growing operation. The McAllister name became synonymous with fairness and prosperity throughout the territory. Tommy grew from a scared little boy into a strong young man. Elijah taught him to ride to rope, to read the land the way his father had taught him. Clara taught him kindness, patience, and the power of a well-timed prayer. On his 18th birthday, Tommy stood before his parents with an announcement that made Clara's heart swell with pride. "I've been accepted to law school," he said, "in Austin." Elijah's face split into a rare grin. "You're going to be a lawyer. Someone needs to make sure what happened to us never happens to anyone else." Tommy's voice was firm. "Judge Wade destroyed a lot of families. I want to spend my life protecting the ones that are left." Clara couldn't speak through her tears. She just pulled her son into her arms and held him tight. "Your grandma would be so proud," she whispered. "Both of them." Tommy left for Austin in the fall. Clara cried for 3 days straight, but she knew it was right. The boy, the man she had raised, was going out into the world to make it better, and he would. She had no doubt. 3 more children followed. A girl named Sarah with Clara's chestnut hair and Elijah's gray eyes. Twin boys James and Daniel, who terrorized the ranch hands and charmed the local girls in equal measure. The big white house filled with noise and laughter, with arguments and apologies, with the beautiful chaos of a family truly lived. Hattie stayed until the end, finally passing peacefully in her sleep at the age of 83. Clara held her hand as she went, whispering thanks for everything the woman had given her. "You're my daughter," Hattie had said in her final moments. "Never had one of my own, but God gave me you." They buried her beneath the oak tree, next to the spot where Clara and Elijah had been married. Every Sunday, the whole family gathered there to lay flowers and say prayers. The years took their toll, as years always do. Elijah's dark hair turned silver. Clara's chestnut faded to white. Their steps slowed, their joints ached. Their eyes needed glasses to read the evening paper. But their love never wavered. On the night of their 50th wedding anniversary, Elijah sat beside Clara on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. "You remember the first time you walked through that gate?" he asked. "I remember being terrified." Clara leaned her head against his shoulder. "I remember thinking you were the coldest man I'd ever met." "I was." "You were also the kindest." She took his weathered hand in hers. "You just didn't know how to show it." "You taught me." Elijah pressed a kiss to her silver hair. "You taught me everything worth knowing." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one. "No regrets?" Elijah asked finally. Clara thought about the question. About the life she had lived, the pain she had survived, the love she had found against all odds. "Not one," she said. "Every broken road led me to you. Even Wade, even Charlotte, even all the fear and the running, even all of it." Clara lifted her head to look at him. "Because if any of it had been different, I might never have knocked on your door. I might never have knelt beside your bed and prayed for a man I thought was sleeping." Elijah smiled. That same smile he'd given her 50 years ago, when he'd told her he loved her for the first time. "I wasn't sleeping," he said. "I know. I heard every word. I know. And I've spent every day since trying to be the man you prayed for." Clara touched his face, tracing the lines that time had carved there. "You became so much more." They kissed soft and sweet, the kiss of 2 people who had loved each other for half a century, and would go on loving each other until the stars burned out. Inside the house, their grandchildren were playing. Sarah's oldest was teaching the twins' youngest how to two-step. Tommy's son was regaling everyone with stories from his first year of law school, following in his father's footsteps, just as Tommy had always hoped. The ranch was full. The family was whole. The legacy was secure. And Clara Whitmore McAllister, the desperate widow who had once walked 3 miles in the Texas heat with nothing but a carpetbag and a child, and a prayer, sat beside her husband and watched their world spin on. "Worth it," she said softly. "What's that?" "All of it." She squeezed his hand. "Every tear, every fear, every moment I thought I'd never be happy again. It was all worth it, because it brought me here. To you. To us." Elijah lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles just as he had the first time he'd told her he loved her. "I'd do it all again," he said. "Every minute, every bullet, every sleepless night." His eyes met hers, still gray as storm clouds, still warm as summer rain. "I'd walk through fire for you, Clara McAllister. I'd fight every demon in hell. I'd—" "Hush." She pressed a finger to his lips. "You don't have to fight anymore. We won. We did, didn't we? We did." The sun finished its descent. The stars claimed the sky. And somewhere in the darkness, a mockingbird began to sing. Clara closed her eyes and listened. She had prayed for Elijah's happiness all those years ago, believing he couldn't hear her. But he had heard. And he had spent every day since answering that prayer with his actions, his love, his unwavering presence by her side. She had walked into his house, a broken woman, a desperate mother, a pawn in another man's cruel game. She was leaving it someday when God called her home as a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a matriarch of a family that would carry her legacy forward for generations to come. That was the miracle. Not that love had found her, but that she had been brave enough to let it in. Clara opened her eyes and looked at the man beside her, her husband, her partner, her answered prayer. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For hearing me. That night. For not pretending you were asleep." Elijah pulled her close, wrapping his arm around her shoulders as they watched the night unfold. "I never pretended with you," he said. "Not once, not ever." Clara smiled, and in that moment, with the stars overhead and the love of her life beside her and 3 generations of her family laughing inside the home they had built together, Clara Jane Whitmore McAllister knew the truth. Some prayers take years to answer. Some miracles arrive dressed in work boots and dusty hats. And some love stories. The real ones, the ones worth telling, start with nothing but a desperate woman, a lonely man, and a midnight prayer that changed everything. This was hers. And it was perfect.